Welcome, fellow seekers of challenge and triumph, to the SufferSooner podcast. Join us on a journey where ordinary souls embark on extraordinary endeavors. From the relentless grind of gravel to the punishing gauntlet that is triathlon, we've tasted our fair share of suffering. So fellow endurance warriors, let's lace up our shoes, strap on our goggles, and dive headfirst into the challenge, knowing that with every step, stroke, and pedal forward, we grow stronger together. All right, guys, welcome to episode number 57. We're going to have the age-old debate of volume versus intensity. So hope you guys are ready for that.
We're doing this?
Yeah.
We're going to join the fray?
We're going to join the fray. So
yeah.
It's been on the it's been on YouTube. Lionel Sanders has been talking about how he's going to do less volume this year and just more intensity to try to get back onto the podium. And then Sam Long came out with, you got to do volume. And so I've heard it on multiple podcasts now. It's kind of like what's going on the triathlon scene. I've heard there's a lot of debate too in the gravel scene about, which is better, doing volume or intensity. So I think we'd get back into it and see what everybody thinks.
Yeah. Also I saw, so you shared those links with me and I watched them and, it's funny that those were the videos that those two created the same week. They got released the same week we did the dark side of social media. The recording. I think we were onto something there.
Yeah.
But I mean, some of that is, there's definitely some engagement farming going on to try to drum up clicks and views. But it is an age-old question. I mean, we've struggled with it with our own training. Which one and when do you know that you need more intensity versus just more volume? Or do you ever need more intensity than volume? And should you ever make those adjustments? And then the other thing is Trainer Road. So we talk about Trainer Road a lot on here because, I mean, it's one of the most popular platforms for, self-coached athletes, and even coaches use it to prescribe coaching.
Yeah, there's even high level, there's been screenshots of, very world tour pros using Trainer Road.
Yeah. And I know I've said a few things on here, Trainer Road's kind of that, sort of in between and all that, but no, it's an elite level platform for sure. It's just, but they're now putting on some of their posts and things about train less to get a higher FTP. And so I think a lot of it is shifting to the conversation around, well, how much recovery, how important recovery is in the process of your athletic development. And it's obviously extremely important, but so we'll get into the whole volume versus intensity debate. I think it's an interesting one. We can dig into that, but so first I think we've got a little bit of news, right?
Yeah, we got a little bit of news. So Danny brought this to my attention. We're still undecided whether or not we're going to do Big Sugar or do another marathon.
Right.
Just because we're crazy like that.
What I say to you, I said, I think I'm going to do another. I think I'm looking at the Vegas Marathon in October.
Yeah, and I just deleted my contact. I said, don't ever call me again.
Lose this number fast.
Lose this number. We're not friends anymore.
But really, I was like, I think I just hate myself. I want to do another marathon. But honestly, it's the half marathon was just like the right amount for me for off season or winter season, and I feel like there's an opportunity to sort of put a good training block in and build up that part of my fitness. And anyway, so yeah, Big Sugar, it's been what I did each of the last 2 years. You did it last year.
I did it last year. It's a great race. Loved it.
Absolutely.
Made sure that, last year when we were dead set on it, made sure I signed up immediately. And I think it, it's sold because you guys were telling me, and what's been happening in the past is that it's been selling out within hours of being open.
Yeah.
And so the news that we got is, the news that we're coming up with is it hasn't sold out yet, guys.
Doesn't look like it.
No.
I mean, just before we started recording today, and I know we'll release this on Friday, so maybe things will change, but at least as of today, when we recorded this, I was one click away from signing up. All I had to do was put my credit card number in. I think if it sold out, it would have said It wouldn't have even let me get that far.
Yeah, it never lets you get that far.
Right.
Or it says, would you like to be on a waiting list or whatever.
Right. And I think I guess the thing I'm struggling with is for me, like I really want to do the event again. I mean, it'd be fun, but for me, a late October gravel race when most of even the local events wrap up in the middle end of September. I think there's a couple of things that we know. Opal is going to come back around this year.
Yep, it'll be the first week in October, which is a pretty safe bet that it's not going to be snowing,
right?
Right. Or windy or just horrible weather. It's usually in this neck of the woods, it's a pretty decent time of year. So like for us going into that late October time frame, we've been riding pretty hard from, basically from now until October.
Right.
And so, getting back to your point about a late season type of race, like by the time we get to October, we're like, I don't know if I can handle like 100 miles of gravel.
The structured training.
Yeah. So it's not that we don't like to ride our bikes, and we ride gravel all the time or ride on the road or, ride our bikes and all that other stuff. But a lot of times you kind of, and this kind of goes with the, the training side of it, is that you do get tired of structured training. And sometimes usually like October is about the time, and late September is about the time that I kind of like am tired of doing structured training, because I've been doing it from basically March until September. And then, if we do like a early season marathon or half marathon, November. So it's like you're looking at October as kind of like our de facto off month.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, the late October race, it's easy to sit here in March and say, man, I can't wait. I'm going to sign up for that. I'm going to go do it. And again, each of the last 2 years, to your point, I get to that point of the year. By the time that September timeframe rolls around, like I'm ready to just ride for the enjoyment, which is fine. And we do, and I know we'll do Opawapu this year. That's one that it's going to be a challenging course, but the fitness is going to be there from September riding. But by the time you get to late October to do a Big Sugar, it's going to be a struggle, and it has been a struggle. I mean, 2 years ago it was after Ironman. It's like a month after Ironman doing that, and then last year, I think I told you like somewhere around the end of September, I'm like, man, I'm really not feeling this race coming up, and anyway, so yeah, I don't know what's going on. It's so the registration fee with the service fees or taxes or whatever it is, like it's $220 is what it's listed as. But when you get to the checkout page, for me, it was like $238. So I'm sitting there doing the math on them going, I really want to support the like we know a lot of people that help support that event, that put it on, that go down and do all the logistics for it and things like that. And you really want to support it. But at the same time, like this is kind of one that kind of goes back to the whole question about, the corporate side of it, because if Lifetime's name wasn't involved in it, do you think that would be a $200 race? Right. I mean, and don't get me wrong, the atmosphere's fun. It's nothing like Unbound in terms of like the volume of people, but it's still a fun event. You got a great expo, really awesome course, great support out there. But man, for $200, I'm thinking we could probably do a couple more local events and just go kind of noodle around and have a good time.
Yeah, because you really kind of only get one aid stop, which is at the brewery.
Right.
And so that's like comes halfway in, this 100-mile course. And I get it. It's 100 miles. It's in October, so it's not as hot. You do have some, as far as and this is my problem kind of with gravel. Like, if it was an Ironman event, you'd have, maybe, you're for 70.3, you pay like almost $350 or whatever. So, but you get the support that you get is a lot more than what you would get in a gravel event like this.
Yeah.
You're basically, let's say you're paying for, you're not paying for any road closures. You're paying for the neutral rollout, after that it's open roads. Like we had trucks and stuff driving. Yeah. There's the one aid station and then the finish line. And then I think we got a medal and a t-shirt.
Yeah. Yeah. Which
you get at a 70.3 event or a triathlon. I'm just trying to compare. Draw the comparison of what you're getting at Ironman. At an Ironman event, you get, There's the water support. There's a village.
Mm-hmm.
There's the aid stations on the bike, which is about every 15 miles.
Yeah.
The run course, it's every mile. So fully stocked aid stations. So you kind of see that, like, for about, $100 more,
Mm-hmm.
you get a lot more services.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I just again think the price of lifetime, going after these events and these gravel events, it's like, are we paying for the fact that there's pros there, or are we paying for the lifetime name?
Yeah.
Because again, like, a lot of people, like, I'm not gonna. We'll talk about Unbound eventually, but my savings for bike racing and all that stuff, half of it was used up just for Unbound.
Yeah.
And that was a lot.
Yeah.
And basically, I registered for, all these other races, the local stuff, and I'm still less money out of the pocket than what, some of these bigger events are. So
yeah, and I know we've done the episodes before, and we can revisit it, but we've done episodes before on, the cost of these races and kind of broken it down and compared it between gravel versus triathlon and all of that. I guess what I get down to is the hesitation to sign up. Is it because it's a 100-mile event in October, at the end of October, or is it because I don't want to spend $250 plus travel and hotel to go ride a 100-mile event in October? Like, I know I'm not going to put my best race forward that time of year,
right?
Because my fitness has already peaked out for the year, and
yeah, and we're talking this from experience. Like, it's not like we're like, oh, this October we're going to be totally smoked. No, it's been the last 5 Octobers that we've been totally smoked. So we're, we thought last year we would be really kind of pumped for it, and it just didn't happen. So that was like,
and don't get me wrong, we had a great time down there. I mean, it was a lot of fun. And you can go back and listen to the race recap. I mean, it was not a great day on the bike for me. You had a pretty good day, but I still had a blast. And you know what? I think, if I can free up that weekend, I'd love to drive down there and go to the expo and support the event, support the racers, and have a good time. But if we're fortunate, we don't live that far away, so we can go down there and probably ride that route. Other than the private road section, the private ranch section, we could ride that route probably anytime we want.
Yep.
And so we're fortunate in that regard. So maybe that weighs in on this some, but I just can't see spending that much money on a late season race. Now, the question is Travis, if it were an $80 event or $120 event, would you sign up today?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where
that's where I am, because it basically makes it so, and I get it. You have to, like, these races, Lifetime and all that stuff, they have to make money on these things otherwise. And so I understand the cost part of it. The part that just, makes it or breaks it for me is I won't be able to give my best effort, and it's not going to be like a true A race for me. Right. So I'm not willing to shell out that much money for it. So
and it's not, and I know it's kind of tough for them too, because it's October and it's like, where do you go? So even if you made that your A race, where do you go with your fitness from there? Like, there aren't any more races after that. That's it.
It's the end of the season race, which is fine. I mean, you can make it your A race, and I think, but the thing is if it was our A race, then we would probably start training in May or June for that type of thing. And go. But, like, again, I have, personal commitments with hockey and all that other stuff. So, like, you can't, I mean, I double checked and made sure, but it's like, we don't have anything scheduled. We may have a couple games or whatever that somebody else is going to have to cover. But, that's why I don't really tend to do too many events in that time frame. But again, that is a tough time of year for us. And, and then again, the cost too, like, to go down, I didn't get out, from, let's say, we'll take Dirty Disco Gravel. Yeah. It was $100. Mm-hmm. Well, I got the t-shirt, so it was like 100 and whatever, 100 and some change, right? Yep. To go ride 100 miles. That, I felt, was worth every cent, every penny. The aid station, there was only one aid station.
Yeah, that's all you need.
And the roads were great. The route was great. Yeah, it was on open roads. There was a neutral rollout with the state trooper and all that stuff. But yeah, I would do that. I would do that race 10 times out of 10.
And I think that's, again, it kind of comes back to the cost is now a prohibitor for Big Sugar from my perspective. I know there's a lot of people out there like, hey, I've never done the event before. And, if you've never done the event before, I would say, if you've got the availability and you think you'll be ready to go do it. It's a great event.
Yeah.
None of this is about a criticism of the event itself or anybody involved with it. It's an awesome event. It's just, I think this kind of comes back to the whole issue in gravel right now with the commercialization side of it. It's like there's that constant debate about Spirit of Gravel, and you won't find Spirit of the Gravel. You won't find anything more evident as the Spirit of Gravel as you did with Disco Gravel last week. And so though if you want that, go to those events and save your money. Yeah. But if you want the event and the sort of the big atmosphere, then Lifetime's doing a great job with that stuff and the people involved with it. I just think that, when you got to shell out a couple $100, and in Unbound's case, it's, $500 of spend before you're really even on the course. Yeah. I think you just get to a point where, I think you said it earlier, I know the sponsors want return on the investment. I get it. We all have worked with businesses. We get it. But at the same time, like, that's why I like the small events, because none of the people we talk to as race directors think once about a profit side of it. Like, if it happens, that's great. But like we saw with last week, most of that money gets donated to good causes. Nobody ever pockets the money. Yeah. It goes back into the event, or it goes into a charity of some type. And I know Lifetime does a lot of great things. So again, not criticism. It's just, to me, there's something to be said for the fact that the commercialization and increasing the prices makes it harder for people to go to these events. And I think that's kind of contributes to the decline of the sport, not the growth of the sport.
Yeah, that's why I think you see a lot of decline in the sign up for this type of stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, like Lifetime, this is what Lifetime is bringing a huge focus onto gravel, and it's
a lot of positives.
It's a great, they got a U23, division now. So like, you got these up and comers that can do well at these races and help find them sponsors and all that other kind of stuff, and help the next generation of kids go, become professionals. And then you have a huge professional thing. But, when you go roll up to a professional event like that, I just, the juice isn't worth the squeeze.
Sometimes. I think what could really help here, because I don't want to come off like we're just complaining about the price, because there's no shortage of people that will do that. I mean, I get it. I think it'd be really interesting if somebody that could speak to it on behalf of Lifetime, or that's close enough to it that knows the sort of inner workings of it, like maybe give some perspective as to the breakdown of those fees. Like, I get it. Lifetime doesn't owe us an explanation of where that money goes. It's, it's our choice to spend it. They don't owe us anything. But I think because they do so many positive things for the cycling community and gravel in general, and they've done a phenomenal job, like you said, with the U23 and things like that in bringing visibility. But maybe help give a little breakdown or perspective. Like, I'm not asking for accounting. I don't need a third party auditor coming in. That's what I'm talking about. I'm just saying, like, give us some perspective as to where those fees, like how it goes to help back into the sport, because otherwise people are left to, well, we don't know where it goes, so somebody must be getting rich off of it. I don't think I'm sure people are, making a few bucks and probably making part of their salary off of it. No issue with that. But maybe just a little perspective as to how much they're doing for the gravel community and for cycling in general. And maybe that would help, kind of ease the pressure on the fact that
make it a little bit of a better, like a less bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah. Because like, oh my gosh, I'm spending $500 on Unbound, and if I did Big Sugar, I mean, I'm $1,000 in on 2 races. And I'm not talking about my hotel and my travel yet. I'm just talking about the events.
Yeah, and that's just the 2 that are close. Like, if we were like, if we wanted to go and do, all of the Lifetime races,
the Otter
Classic, all that other stuff. I mean, if they're all $200 a pop,
I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of a lot.
Yeah. So any case, I don't know. I don't want to come off like just complaining about prices, because I get it. This stuff isn't free to run. But when I see our local people putting on phenomenal events and able to get away with charging, I think the lowest I've seen so far, I want to say is like $65.
Yep.
So anywhere from $65 to $125 is probably the range I'm seeing for our local events. When I know our folks around here can do it for that, it makes me wonder, then where's the other $100 to $125 going?
Right.
It must be going somewhere. And I get it. The finish line structures aren't cheap to put up.
Right.
So I get all that. I just think that maybe just a little bit more perspective would help, and probably help on the PR side. I mean, they're not asking me for PR advice. I just think that that would help. That would help
exactly.
a lot.
If they were like, a division, like, this is what pays for the pros, this is what pays for the U23 prize purse. Mm-hmm. This is what pays for, the rest of the race, all the race fees or whatever.
Yeah.
Then you're just like, okay, I can understand that. That's cool. But again, it's just one of those things that, and I think you're seeing it, and the reason we're talking about it is the fact that it hasn't sold out yet.
I know.
So it's like, we can't be the only ones that are discussing this,
right?
And so I just, that's why I think it's news to me, because when you texted me the other day and said, hey, it's not sold out yet, you want to do it? And I'm like, are you serious? It's not sold out yet?
I know. Because really the first year I did it, I missed the window. Like it sold out so fast. Like
you had to get on the wait list.
Well,
you got to transfer.
Well, I got on the wait list, and then I was on a group, and somebody was nice enough to say, hey, I found out I can transfer. They'd volunteered the year before, and so they had a free, well, not a free, but it's a opportunity to enter before the
lottery
comes. Well, it's not even the lottery, but the open sign up starts. And so basically you've got a reserve spot. Is more for lack of better words. And they found out they could transfer. So they transferred it to me at no cost, which was super awesome. And because they got in otherwise in a different way. And then even with that, I know some of the sponsors or people that are either part of the expo or connected in some way, shape, or form, like they get the opportunity to hand out entries and stuff like that. You still got to pay to get in, but like it's to hand out like, hey, we're a sponsor here, Travis.
Specialized, use my code,
right.
And then
and I've seen that come up a couple of times over the last few years. So I know like that first year I was able to get in like a month or two after it sold out, and I was really thankful for that. But yeah, this year, I mean, it's been open for a while now, and it's still not sold out. There's something's going on there. So.
Yeah, something's going on with the gravel public. That's why we were talking about it.
I really hope it's not people think that it's not worth it. I mean, as far as like the experience, the experience side, again, I'm not criticism of the event at all. It's just I think it really is a general sentiment, like you said, amongst the gravel community, like, hey, that's a lot of money to ask for that time of year, and maybe we need to sort of rein in some of these prices a little bit.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, so now on with the topic of the day, right?
So we got the volume camp. So, Danny, are you team volume or team intensity?
About killing me.
Yeah,
I'm not either one. Can I say that? Can I say I'm not either one? Here's the thing. Let me just start it off with this. It depends. Okay, so what are we?
True, spoken like a true coach,
right?
It all depends.
Yes. Right? Like what are you trying to do? And I think so. In the context of, let's put this around the context of what started this between you and I about the folks doing Ironman, right?
So we'll say
ultra endurance event, like
ultra endurance event. So like maybe your 50K or your
12, anywhere from a 10+ hour event. How about that?
So we'll say something that's going to take you pretty much most of the day.
Yeah.
So volume or intensity.
So I think there is a floor of volume that you have to get to support those types of things. So said differently, I can't go out and do okay. So if let's just say I have 10 hours or 15 hours of training time available per week. Okay. I can't say, oh well, if I've got 15 hours available, I'm going to do 10 hours of intensity work and 5 hours of zone 2 or active recovery. And I can't do that and expect that my body can recover to be able to support that type of an approach, and B, that you're actually going to show up on race day with the necessary fitness to endure that long of an event. Like I don't think that's like, so if you take it to the extreme and say, I'm going to go all in on the intensity side, I don't think that's going to work for you.
Can't do 15 hours of intensity.
Right. You just can't. Like most people can't. Now, does a pro do that as part of a 30-hour training week? I bet they do. Yeah. So we're talking about the average person here. And this is why I think it's really important people don't get caught up in the, what do the pros do? You know, like you mentioned, you know, Lionel Sanders. Like, I don't really care what Lionel Sanders does because I'm not Lionel Sanders for one. And that dude has done enough training, like, and he's going coachless this year, right? He's coaching himself.
Coaching himself.
So he's self-coaching. Like, that guy knows his body better than anybody. He understands how his body reacts to these things. He's going to find out, you know, if he's right or not. And so in any case, I think you have to have a floor of volume. I think so. If you're wanting to do a long endurance event, I think you have to do some minimal amount of volume work. And I don't know what that number is, but I don't think you can go out and say, well, I'll just do a bunch of sprint intervals and call it good.
Right.
It doesn't work that way.
So like somebody who's doing like 10 hours a week to go do a 10-hour plus event, you think, you know, you
can get through it.
You think you can get through it?
You can survive it. Now, will you have
do 2 hours of intensity every week?
Yeah.
You know, if you're splitting it 80-20.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Right. But the thing is so now you get into the dynamics of the race and the dynamics of the course and things like that, because in that example, if I've spent all my time on volume, what happens in a course like Unbound when you face a 14% grade and unless you've been working on muscular endurance and cadence drills, what happens if you've got to put out a, you know, VO2 max level or a threshold level effort just to get up the freaking hill? Because how many times do we see that in gravel? Like, it's great to say, oh, I'm just going to hold zone 2 this whole time. Yeah, well, you can do that until you face a terrain like the Flint Hills, and you find out you're on like a 5-minute threshold or VO2 max, or even 8-minute threshold interval of the course. You have no choice if you want to, especially if you want to hang in a group. What happens when you put that effort out? You haven't been training that. Yeah. How does your body handle that? Do you like, I get your aerobic system's tuned in. It's great, but
you can survive 10 hours at zone 2.
You're going to be living down here all day long.
Yep.
Your day is going to be a long day. It's going to be a long day. Will it get done? Oh, it'll get done. Yeah. You might have to walk some hills because you just won't be, like, you'll get to a point where your muscles will just be done. You'll be cooked.
Yeah. So let's say I'm going from 10 hours and somehow, like, maybe, you know, the wife's pitching in and she's going to take care of some childcare. So that frees me up with another 5 to 6 hours. Yeah. Do I fill that in with more volume, or should I add some intensity to that?
Again, it depends. Like, I don't know where you're, like, see, this is why this debate is such a it's such a false debate, because it really does depend on every person. So, because I remember we talked about this.
Don't get us wrong, people. We have talked about this endlessly, like hours and hours.
For a couple of years now, back and forth.
Always.
In fact, I remember we had a long discussion after a run last fall as we set up for this year. We talked about, because remember, I went down this path later last year where I started doing a lot, just in my out and about riding. I started working in some sprint intervals, and I really was happy with where, like, my 5-second power was getting to. I was like, it'd never been that high before. Yeah. Now, was I able to get there because of all the volume I'd done?
Right.
Or was I getting there because I was working intensity in, and now I'm starting to see intensity adaptations because I never really worked that part of my system before.
Right.
I don't know. But here's what I would say is, I think that there's a certain point where your trajectory of improvement starts to plateau, just like anything else. So when you've been working volume and a specific intensity for so long, you start to get into that plateau, and it's like, I can do this for 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, 7 hours. I can do that intensity, and I don't really, like, I get more fatigued, but, like, I just do it, right? The aerobic capacity is there to do that type of thing. I think that's the point where your endurance level gets so close to where your threshold is that you've got to get intensity to sort of pull that threshold up. That's the sort of conventional thought process, right? Like now you got to get some intensity to pull the threshold up, or can you push it from the bottom by just doing more volume? And I think the reality is you will get incrementally better if you just tack on more volume.
Yep.
If you just tack on the 5 more hours of volume, you will get incrementally better. But where are you going to get the bang for the buck at?
Right.
And to me, if I were in your situation, you'd say, hey, you know what, I just freed up 5 more hours. I'm going to find a way to work some intensity in there and make sure I can recover. But I'm going to work some intensity and start touching those other zones, especially if I'm getting closer to a race.
Yeah.
So that way, when I talk about the terrain of Unbound, I can handle that. Like, you know what, if I've got to do a VO2 max push to get over a hill and break away from a group or try to bridge up to another group, I can do that and feel like I got sort of the gas in the tank to do it.
Yeah.
So,
and I think for the listeners too, we talk about volume when we're talking about adding volume, we're talking about, zone 2 and below, your aerobic threshold and below. Maybe you do a little bit of some, tempo stuff.
Yeah.
But basically, like if you're a straight volume person, you're filling a lot of those hours with these long, slow, distance rides, or runs or swims or triathlon, that kind of stuff.
Yep.
You're spending a lot of time, we talk about, 80-20. I mentioned that there. That's like Matt Fitzgerald. That's the Norwegians use like a certain variant of that where they do about 20% of high intensity, 80%. So when we're talking about adding volume, we're just saying adding more time.
Right.
So like at that 80-20 split, we'll say.
Yeah.
So like if I added 5 hours, then, then one of those hours would now be an intensity. The other 4 would be some sort of, aerobic endurance ride.
Yeah. So make the case for the volume here.
So I think, volume, I think is probably more important than I find intensity, because volume is what builds everything so that you can handle the intensity. So when you do those long distance, hold on, let me get to the end of the thought here.
All right.
I'm not going to say it's going to make you faster. I'm just saying that it lets you go longer at the same effort level. So, you build the mitochondrial density, your cardiac output changes, your ability to process fuels.
All these adaptations
happen because your volume has increased, because your body has been stressed, because the volume has been more. So you have to come up with these adaptations.
Okay.
And they don't happen when you just do like HIIT workouts, one right after the other.
You don't think so?
I think there is some, yes, but I don't think that the adaptations that you want to survive a 10 plus hour event don't happen because you did 10 hours worth of high intensity training and you haven't done any build up of the long endurance stuff. I'm just saying, taking it to the extreme, right?
Yeah.
If you're doing 80-20 and you're doing 10 hours and you're doing 2 hours of intensity and the other 8, then you're having a pretty well-rounded plan, which will work.
What about the thought though that, if you're doing threshold, sweet spot, even VO2 max work, so basically anything has intensity more than zone 2 but is not anaerobic. So I think everything we're talking about right now is we're not talking about anaerobic work because it's a different energy system.
Right.
And I do believe that anaerobic is typically reserved for that sharpening of the knife, if you will, before your peak races. And I mean, that's not to say people don't work on anaerobic other times. It's just the focus doesn't really come in until you get a little closer to your race event because it's so taxing, or it can be. But so let's take the other, like basically, sweet spot, threshold, and VO2 max is what I would consider intensity, even though sweet spot is sub threshold and it kind of blends into the threshold. For this argument, let's just leave it there in the as part of the intensity side. So if you're doing high volumes of those, are you saying that you don't think you're getting the same adaptations or support necessary to do those long events? You're still doing the volume. It's just at a higher intensity.
Right. So you're doing, so if you were, let's say you were taking 10 hours and you were doing 2 hours worth of intensity, then you go to like 15 hours of volume and you're adding an extra hour of intensity. Right?
Yeah.
So I think you get, so out of those 3 hours, you get a little bit bump from that intensity. Yeah. Eventually the curve starts to dull.
Right.
But
sounds like you're saying what I just said.
But the other part is that 10 hours worth of zone 2, the building of that.
Yeah.
Like, so eventually like you can make durations longer.
Yeah.
And what I see happens is, and we'll get to this on the final thoughts, but like, just think about this. So as you get fitter and fitter, you know, those 3 hours of intensity now aren't enough.
Yeah.
So now you have to add even more volume.
Yeah.
So
here's the way I look at this, and
that's how I look at it coaching, is that now we've reached the part where you're starting to slide off, and I would be like, okay, Danny, you only have 15 hours, right? Because you're busy, you're high, you know, you're doing work and you got kids and stuff. So then now what we're going to do is we're going to start increasing the volume of the intensity.
Right.
So instead of 3 hours, we're going to go 4 hours of intensity in a 15-hour week, and we're going to start pushing that out. Yeah. So eventually you'll start doing more intensity, but that's after you've built that.
Yeah.
That thing.
But I think that it's an interesting. So I think it's at the end of the day, what are you going after? You're trying to get your body to adjust and support these adaptations to get to that peak more or peak level of fitness, high level of fitness. And there's two levers that really do that. And that's what it comes back to. It's volume and it's intensity. And I think I don't know what the formula is, right? Like, is it volume plus intensity equals fitness gain? Is it volume times intensity equals intensity gain? Is it volume squared times intensity equals?
Exactly.
So like, that's the thing. Like, there's no scientific formula that I think anybody's really been able to come up with that says, here's the relationship between volume and intensity that yields the result that you're looking for. But what I do think is that if you go 100% on either one of those, then you're gonna find out that your fitness will stagnate. Yep. You'll hit that point.
That's the other argument too, is that like, okay, I'm going to do 15 hours, Danny. I got 15 hours. Yeah. It's all been, I'm just going to do zone 2 rides.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I don't think that, I think aerobically you're going to be in great shape. Yep. And again, will you get done with your events? Yes. But the question then becomes, well, are you competing? Right. Because if you're competing, how will you handle the attacks?
Right. How will you handle the fact that like you have to, go through chunky gravel muddy gravel or something like that?
Here's a parallel. Okay. Go climb 10 flights of stairs. Okay. If you can walk up the 10 flights of stairs, I know you're going to get to floor 10. Yeah. But if I say walk 2 flights of stairs and do a dead sprint, the next 5 flights of stairs, and then walk the remainder, the last 3. Yeah. Those last 3, I don't know if you're going to make it there. You might just fall over and like just decide, you know what, this is a good place to just curl up on the side of the stairs, and I'm just going to hang out here. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Take a little ditch nap. Yeah. So that's the analogy that I can come up with to try to figure out now, if I do this enough times, do I get up the stairs faster if I incrementally increase my walking pace, or do I get there faster if I sprint 1 floor, walk, sprint 1 floor, walk? And then now we're getting the whole theory of, well, this is what happens when you do like the VO2 max intervals, and why if you can't do 4x4s right now, then you do like minute and a half with a 30-second break and a minute and a half, and then eventually you start taking that down from 30 seconds down to 15 seconds to 0 seconds, and now all of a sudden you can bridge it. Now you can do the whole 4 minute, whatever it is. So like that's why I think it's really important. Like what is your, like, this is why it's so individual. Yeah. So on the volume side, I think, if you can do more volume, should you? Yes. The answer is yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if my feeling on the volume side is always that if you're wanting to compete, the one who does there's only so much intensity you can recover from in the week.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to that, but you can do more volume than you can intensity.
Yeah.
So like we said, if you can add, 5 hours, one of those hours is going to be intensity, but the other 4 are volume or just zone two.
Yeah.
So you're getting more from that type of thing.
Yeah.
So that's why I say like volume is kind of king,
Yeah.
but only to a point.
Yeah.
And so,
all right.
then we get to the intensity camp.
All right. Make the argument.
So now my feeling with intensity is if you don't have that much time, because let's say you're less than 10 hours a week you can put into this thing, then intensity all the way. Intensity, as much as you can recover from.
Okay.
Because you're...
Now, when you say intensity, what do you mean? Do you mean like sweet spot?
I mean, threshold, sweet spot,
yeah.
VO2 max, anaerobic sprints, all that kind of stuff.
So think about 10 hours a week. What you're really saying is if I can do an hour and 2 hours a day for 5 days, right? Which, for a lot of people, a 2-hour workout is a pretty long workout.
Yeah.
And so if I can do 2 hours but the thing is the intensity part of that means that you're going to have to do a couple of like long threshold blocks in order to make that 2 hours, like the bulk of that to be intensity.
Right.
Which is hard to do because the definition of threshold is what you can hold for an hour.
Yeah. So it would be like, if you were thinking it from coaching, it would be like, you're going to do a lot of sweet spot.
Yeah.
Just because that's kind of what you can recover from.
Well, I think
which is the lower end, right?
Right, but I think
but again, you can't just go out and ride a whole hour at VO2 max.
Right.
So you're
otherwise not your VO2 max.
Right, exactly. So what you're saying, like when I say intensity, I'm just saying the hours. Like if you do like let's say 5 by 3 minutes for whatever, and that's your workout.
Yeah.
Usually that's in an hour chunk of time. That'll be an hour of intensity type stuff.
Yeah.
I'm not going down like with some athletes.
Not
yes,
like time and zone.
You go down to like time and zone, which
Yeah.
you can do.
Yeah.
But my feeling is like most of those efforts, if you're going to see on somebody's training, there's going to be like, oh, you're going to ride at zone 2 for 30 minutes. And then you're going to do some VO2 max repeats and then finish with a like sweet spot / tempo ride, which is all intensity at the end there.
Well, I do think there's something to be said though for if you can do, again, it all comes back to assuming you can recover.
Yeah.
Because that's the hard part. I mean, ultimately, I would say, if I'm being honest, I'd say you do as much intensity as your body can handle.
Yep.
But then you hit that point where, well, what if I'm overtraining?
Yeah.
But the way I look at this is if you can recover, I think your body, and this is my opinion, I don't have anything to back this up. I don't have a lab and all the data points, but my opinion, I believe, and just from my own experience, is if I can do a block with solid intensity and get good recovery, I get more out of the intensity. Like in terms of like when I do recover and I do like a taper, I feel like when I start to peak out, like it's on, man. Like I can hold that hard threshold or hard VO2 max effort and put the screws to somebody on a group ride and then hold that recovery in a sub threshold zone and then do it again and then do it again and then do it again, like relentless. And I think that's a function of now the question would be, is that because of all the base I've done up to this point? Like we've done a lot of base, especially we go back to the Ironman training a few years ago when we talked about how we were very disciplined about our zone 2 rides on Sunday long ride. And I mean, we dialed it in for a good, 6 to 8 weeks. And man, that was like hit a whole new level.
Yep.
But that starts to make the argument for the volume camp, And so that's why I keep saying like it just does depend. But I do think your body gets more out of the intensity side if you can recover from it. I think you get more adaptations. I think you torch more calories that way. You can definitely impact your body composition a lot more. If you're disciplined off the bike nutrition wise, which I'm not, but I think that that's where I would say the intensity side has the advantage. I mean, I think your body gets so much more. I think it does get some of those adaptations that you get from the endurance zones, but it gets more because you're stressing the body so much. It's forced to adapt. Like you're talking about the mitochondrial density and all that stuff. Like, again, I don't do the research on this stuff enough to be able to speak with authority, but the things I have read and just the logic behind it as I think about it, like, if your body has to produce energy, it's got to get it. It all gets it from the same place unless you start to go anaerobic. So if I'm getting more intensity for a longer duration, that means my mitochondria must have done something to get more efficient, or I have more mitochondria to produce the ATP.
Or you get more efficient at burning different fuels, that kind of
Well,
stuff.
that's a whole other conversation. Like this whole thing, like, I'm actually starting to read too, like there's like this growing thought that this talk of fat adaptation in zone 2 might just kind of be a little silly. Mm-hmm. And that the reality is your body needs to burn a mixture of fats and carbs anyway. But the reality is your body has the ability, that carbs are so much more accessible.
Yep.
And as long as you can ingest them, then your body can, and you're seeing now, like on the pro tour level, like these guys are ingesting ridiculous numbers of carbs. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah.
And so now the question is like, well, I mean, if carbs are the fuel source, I know everybody's like, oh, well, if you can do zone 2, you can burn more fat. And I'm like, but your zone 2 can only get so high. And what's that based on? It's probably based on the volume that you can put in.
Yep.
Because I'm not convinced that I can just go out and just rail zone 6 and think that somehow I'm going to stretch out the duration and the level that my zone 2 is. I just don't think it works that way. So I think it really has to come back to a combination of the two.
Yep.
And it's also individual. It's like, I can't say I live in one camp. How anticlimactic is that?
Right. Exactly. I'm the same way. Like I'm not team volume. I do think that, I prefer volume. Mm-hmm. Over intensity, just because, again, it feels like when I'm doing a lot of volume.
Well, nobody likes intensity.
No, it makes the intensity easier.
Yeah. Well,
so when I do a lot of volume, it makes
more tolerable.
Yeah, it makes it's kind of hard to explain, but again, I'm like a test subject of one, but
sure.
Like when I do a lot of volume, it doesn't make the hard days, like the hard days are very hard.
Yeah.
And, and you do them, but I feel like I'm able to, like, I feel like sometimes when you do intensity, your body kind of holds you back. Like your brain goes, ooh, this feels like a little bit too hard. Like, oh, we can't go that far. But when you're doing a lot of volume and you're used to like the thing that you're doing, it seems like you can push that intensity a little bit further. And so that's why I prefer volume for me better. Now, for my athletes and stuff, it really depends on, how much time they have and what their goals are and all that stuff. So like, and we talk about this all the time, is like, what do you want to get out of your event, right? Mm-hmm. So if you want to be competitive, well, you're going to have to do volume and intensity.
I was going to say, you got to
do them both.
Yeah.
If you want to be on the podium of stuff, you just can't go out and ride 10 hours a week and, be able to smash your state time trial.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting because, knowing that we're going to be interviewing some of the winners from the Gravel Cup as we come up here and gravel season, really gets going. It'll be interesting how many of them are willing to talk about this kind of part of their conversation around the training side.
Right.
My guess is obviously it's a blend, but my guess is that they're always looking for. I have to guess that there's folks that are always looking for ways to add more intensity. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like it still comes back to you have to have a certain amount of volume. I mean, put this differently. If the answer was just add more volume, then we'd all be riding 100 hours a week of zone 2 and zone 1. We'd never get off of our bikes because we could just, cruise along in zone 1, zone 2 while we're working from home all day, the people that do. And it's like, then I'd be able to go out on Sunday and just throttle people on the group ride because I amp up my volume so much that like, but that's not the answer.
Right.
If it were, then you would see all the pros out there do nothing but zone 2 all day long and nothing else. But no, you don't see that. You see a lot of 4 or 5 hour rides with multiple zones mixed into that.
Yep.
So that's where I would actually go. It's the variability of your workout that I think can be a huge factor. I don't know that, like, what's wrong with like a kitchen sink type approach of your workouts? Why do I have to have a 5 hour zone 2 ride and do nothing else?
Right.
Are you saying my body doesn't adapt when I do 3 hours of zone 2 and then I kick it up to a sweet spot? As long as I truly keep it sweet spot and don't let it go into the above threshold, the super threshold, aren't I still getting the adaptations?
Yeah.
I mean, I know I kick up the fuel source mixture, but like, does your body really care, or does it just kind of live on the spectrum of like the intensity is being requested? I got to produce more energy, so I tap into the fuel source, and then it comes back. Like, I think there's a lot about the body we just don't know, and that's why I think it's fun to watch people like Lionel Sanders say, you know what, I think I know my body very well, and I'm going to put it to the test, and we're going to find out.
Yeah.
I think I'd really applaud him. I think it was. I don't know if I care for all the drama around the videos, but I do like I like what's going on there because I think it's going to be fun to see.
Yeah, I mean, I like Sam Long's approach too. I mean, he's a big volume guy.
Yeah.
You know, he's like, you might as well, and he stated it too. And we can Dylan Johnson, Keegan Swinson, they're big volume guys, but Sophia Villafane, her longest ride is 6 hours.
Yeah.
And she's winning Unbound.
I know.
So it's like, these different approaches of, how much volume do you need versus how much intensity you need.
Now she's winning Unbound in how many hours?
Just like 11 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, so even at the top level, these pros have this debate.
Yeah.
And really, I think what happens is, you fall into the trap, and you go like, well, Keegan rides 40 hours a week, and so I must ride 40 hours a week.
I'd love to be in that position. Yeah.
And it's the thing is like, the reason these guys are pros is because they're really good at knowing their bodies, and they're able to recover from these efforts.
Yeah. And
so that brings us to the training thoughts, right? Yeah. So either if you're an intensity athlete and you prefer intensity, or you're a volume athlete and you prefer, longer, bigger volume weeks, that type of stuff, you just, I'm somebody who, probably puts in like, 3 hours a day at least. I'm coaching kids how to swim. I'm, riding my bike. I'm running when I can, I'm doing swimming, all that kind of stuff. So I'm heavily invested in the volume because that's the way it is. It's just, I've done that forever. And when I don't do anything, I'm kind of weird, but
just embrace the volume camp, Travis.
Right.
I do. Hear it.
But the thing is my volume is separated so that there is hard days that are very intense, and there's light days.
Well, I can remember when we first started riding together, it's funny because it wasn't long. We first started riding together, and we would ride with a few people, and then all of a sudden, it was just you and I because nobody wanted to do the stupid things that we would want to do.
Yeah, they wouldn't want to suffer and go over every single road that went up this mountain.
Yeah. But I mean, I remember we talked about that a lot. Was goes back to the old, easy days easy, the hard days hard. And I think that's really the answer. It's like a lot of people on their intense days, they think they're doing intensity, not so much. Like you've got to really pour it all out on leave it all out there. And I don't think people do that. And I think, that's why a lot of times the intensity doesn't really
the intensity
result.
kind of gets blunted. That
and I'm guilty.
The level that you're able to go intensity, you're just not recovering enough. And so you kind of, what you think is VO2 max is now kind of dipping into that threshold range. Right. And so then you're not seeing, again, the volume curve comes up, and eventually those zones kind of all squeeze together. The same thing happens with, the other end. The intensity kind of doles down, and everything is just kind of like this flat, little zone, and you just can't go hard enough. Your body won't let you.
Yeah. But yeah, I think, and the way I look at it too is it's like I said a minute ago about the volume thing. I mean, if the answer was one or the other, then that's what people would be doing.
Yeah.
And so I really do think it's an individual conversation. I hate to like, again, be anticlimactic about it, but it's like, it really depends on what your goals are and what you're trying to get out of your training. I do tend to go more towards the intensity side because for me, I find the intensity workouts more rewarding. I think there's something to be said for, it's funny because you do an endurance workout and you feel like you get done and you're like, oh, I could keep going. Like I can do that all, do that all day. Keep going. It's just fun. Like it's not fun, but it's like, I can do it. I can just, and I know that's like you should never, in an endurance day, you should never get off the bike or get done with your run going, oh my gosh, that totally gassed me. Like if you did, then sorry, you were in the wrong zone. Like I know your zone probably should normally this, but yeah, just no. There's something to be said for getting done with an intense workout and
just feeling completely spent
and knowing you left it all there and you had nothing else to give. And I just find it more rewarding when you can look at the metrics after and you're like, you know what? I just set a new 5-second power. I just set a new 1 minute power. I just set a new 5 minute power. I hate 20-minute threshold blocks, but I just set a new 20-minute power. Yeah. It's like, that's a lot of fun. It's very rewarding. And to me, that like gives you the motivation to like keep going. And I think that's where, you kind of come back and say, well, then maybe those 5-hour volume days are working, and maybe they're not, but
no, I think if you think of your, again, we'll go with the 10-hour, 15-hour person, most of the time, if you're doing, 80% zone 2 and then you're doing 20% intensity workouts or whatever, that can be a sliding scale too throughout the year. Like you can take that 20% and and the thing is, as long as you're recovering from it, you can start pushing that up to maybe 30, 40%, right?
And
so, that's kind of the thing. And that's one of the things that people don't talk about is like, the thing that I took away from the Lionel Sanders and the Sam Long thing is that it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
You either have to be team volume or team intensity.
How much of that was just social media? Bantering.
I think just us as humans just want to be, like, well, I'm team so and so, and
you want to be in the camp.
Yeah, I want to be.
I want to be with my people.
Yeah, I got to be with my people, and it's like I'm always like. And I was like thinking, I'm like, why are you guys going? Like, no, it's a good mix of both and what your body can handle. Like, if your body can handle more volume, then give it more volume.
Yeah.
If your body can handle more intensity, then give it more intensity.
It doesn't have to be one of the other guys.
No. And that's, and I heard a lot of, podcasters that were talking about it. And of course we're talking about it too.
Sure. Yeah.
They were basically saying, no, the really great athletes do both.
Yeah.
And they get a reward from they get the best out of themselves from doing a good mixture of both at certain times of the year.
And how much of this is just Lionel Sanders putting that out there? It's like a gamesmanship kind of thing where he's like
fishing for
and he's like, now the competition's like, oh, he's changing his strategy and maybe we oughta maybe he's really onto something now and then it's like, I don't know. Like,
well, the thing is
he really
when the first races come out, and if he smokes everybody, then you're going to see everybody going to intensity training 100%, right? So like it's the gamble. So if he comes out and he just starts spanking everybody, then everybody's going to be like, "Oh, volume's the worst. You can't do volume anymore."
It's the same thing though with like, the world tour, and it's like everybody wants to do what Tade is doing. It's like, no, what the reason that Tade is beating everybody is because Tade is doing what works for Tade.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the answer. I mean, now can we talk about, is there, some secret formula to helping with recovery that the advanced tour riders are doing that others aren't? Sure, probably. Right. But I mean, at the end of the day, these training plans when you get to that level, of these guys, like your training plan is customized to you. I mean, there's no higher level of customization
Yeah,
to go to. They have access to all the data, all the tests.
They know Tade's intensity down to the minute, to the second, probably.
They track, I mean, for crying out loud, they track what they track what goes in the body and what comes out of the body.
Yeah.
For, if you know what I'm saying. Like they track it all. They know all that crap.
Yep.
Literally.
Yep. Literally and figuratively.
So like, and I mean, it's just like, at the end of the day, it comes back to these guys are getting plans, both athletic training plans, nutrition plans, recovery plans. I mean, everything is being tailored for them. When you get to that level. And I don't know if it's the same way in pro triathlon. My guess is probably not, because the money's just not there like it is on. But I do think that, again, somebody like Lionel, who knows himself better than anybody, I do kind of question if not having a coach, like, does he really not have a coach, or is he just like, he has advisors that are helping to guide
exactly.
him? But he
makes
sets
the
his
ultimate
workout.
decision. Yeah,
that's fine, whatever. But anyway, it's going to be interesting. I'd be willing to bet, though, what it all boils down to is these guys are, at the end of the day, they're going to make the training adjustments that the data tells them to make, or that their body tells them to make. That's
what's being like, and that's what being a data-driven like coach or an athlete or anybody is. You know, and we do this all the time. Yeah, every 4 weeks there's a test.
There's a test.
So it's like,
now I'm on like every 3 weeks now.
Yeah,
like,
so you do an FTP test, and you're like, well, did my FTP come up or did it go down?
Yeah.
And you're like, well, okay.
Yeah.
Or you do an effort, and is your heart rate lower or is it higher?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, has the training been working or not?
I just did that. Yeah. So I just did an hour and a half workout yesterday, just an endurance ride with some cadence drills. And what do I do after the ride? I go back and I look at the 5-minute block, and I try to compare it to the same 5-minute block from 2 weeks ago when I did the same ride. I'm like, ooh, you know what? My heart rate might be just a little bit lower, but was the room a different temperature? I don't remember. I don't have temperature. What am I going to do? I don't have
what
temperature.
am I going to do? I don't know how was it hotter?
Was it hotter? Is it on my Garmin? Did I see it? I go over. So yeah, it's like, again, you try not to get wrapped around the axle on that stuff, but that's what it is. Like we do it too. And
that's why I try to, like, the best thing that you can do, right, is you have these certain, let's say, sections, like before Strava had segments.
Yeah.
You would go out and you'd run around your block, and
Yep.
you're like, well, last time I ran around my block and it was, 3 minutes and
It's the
15
benchmark.
seconds. Yeah. And you just have this benchmark that you go out and do. And that's how you basically, that's what, coaches do. That's what coached athletes do. This is what pros do. They get a plan, they start executing the plan, then they test it, and they're going, okay, I'm seeing improvement. So the plan is working.
Right.
So what I changed is working.
Yeah.
And
guess what? It's only going to work for so long. And we got to change it all
again. And then they got to change
it
all again. So that's the thing. I think, and this will be my last little training thought, but I think what amateurs don't do is they don't have those benchmarks enough. And so, they just...
Can I throw one in?
Yeah.
I think they and even if they do have the benchmarks, they expect the results to change too fast.
Yes.
They expect, like, well, I did my 3-week workout, Travis. Why? Coach, I did my 3 weeks, and I did them exactly what you said. And
my time is exactly the same.
My time's exactly the same. Or my heart rate is exactly the same. And coach, I don't understand why. I thought it was going to work. And it's like, it is working.
Yep.
Like, that's the thing.
It's just not that measure. Like,
how long does it take before your heart? I mean, think about what you're asking your body to do to change, like, your resting heart rate and the performance heart rate. You're asking a muscle that you've been dealing with for whatever your age is, that's been beating from the minute that it started in the womb to now. You're asking it to change in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean. How long? I mean, my threshold heart rate has been 154.
I know.
For as long as I can remember. It has not. Sometimes it's 156, and Training Peaks will update me, and then sometimes it drops down. But that's a 2-beat difference.
Yeah.
So like you're telling me, it's just like it's. But my power has changed. My speed on the run has changed. My swim times have changed. So it's like. The things that you see, yes, the benchmark is good, but it's the other parts that go with that too. did you feel completely gassed after
Right.
you ran your benchmark? Did you give everything you had into that, or
Yeah.
were you just running a pace and then you were just seeing what that was? So it's, there's a lot of things that, like, did you recover from it instead of, you ran it on Tuesday and now you feel like you can run on Wednesday,
Yeah.
whereas before it was Friday before you felt like running again.
know.
So those are like the changes that a lot of athletes don't look at. And it's like, those are the things that, like, yes, you're getting adaptations that you're not seeing directly in your pace or time or heart rate.
And if you had I guess if we had all the data out there, it would show up in a data point somewhere. But us being amateurs, we just don't.
Yep.
We don't have it, and that's okay. Yeah, I think patience is still the number one key, and really we keep coming. It comes back to, if you execute whatever the plan is, if you execute it consistently, and you have a little bit of patience, you're gonna see the results.
Yeah.
It just takes time.
And then if you don't see the results,
make a change.
then you're like, okay, I know this didn't work.
Right.
So that's just as valuable, knowing what works.
That's exactly
So it's
right.
like you get to a pro level, they know a lot what works for them and what's
it's by
worked for
feel.
them in the past.
Yeah.
And then, they have and they also know what hasn't worked for them
right.
in the past.
That's right.
So they've made all the same mistakes.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. So, well, that was fun. That's a pretty fiery conversation.
Oh yeah. I'd like to see what everybody thinks in the comments for sure.
I know. And that's the thing. Like, I really want to see, like, do people, and don't be swayed necessarily by either one of our opinions. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't know. We could be wrong.
Yeah. Again,
So-
I coach athletes, and each one of them has a different volume versus intensity. They have a different number of hours. They have different jobs. So, like, some are more stressful than the others, and they can't handle the certain amount of, they can't handle 20% of the week being intense. They can only handle 5%.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
which is just the way it is.
Yeah.
And they're still making improvements, but
Yep.
there's always, there's no clear-cut answer. I wish there was, because if it did, then we'd all be robots. We'd
Yeah.
all be pros, and we'd be, fighting for tenths of a second at the Tour de France.
Yeah. Someday. All right. So we ready to get on to rapid fire then?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see
Okay.
what rapid fire's got.
So
the
our
spicy topic.
good old favorite AI bot of ChatGPT. I'm going to try out a couple of different models to see if ChatGPT has been our favorite for a while here.
Yeah.
And it's come up with some really good questions, but there's some new contenders out there, and we're gonna maybe ask from another source. But this is going to be ChatGPT this week, and I love it. ChatGPT doesn't really care. It doesn't care if it offends you. It's going to ask you tough questions, and you better answer them.
Yeah.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So I guess the first one, this is really around, like, weaknesses and contradiction, like calling out your weaknesses and some of the contradictions that people have when they make these arguments. So if high volume training is so effective, then why do so many average people still suck despite the endless miles? I mean, I don't suck. I put a lot of miles into it. I don't think I suck. I mean, I'm not a champion yet, ever, maybe, but
maybe sometime this year, maybe.
I get beat by a lot of people, but I beat a lot of people too. So I'm okay with that.
So I think what happens, again, you fall into this trap of making your easy days hard, and then therefore makes your hard days easy.
Yeah.
So you go into, like, the gray zone or whatever of intensity, and it's a trap.
Yeah.
And if you don't have structure to your training plan, then you're just going to go by what you feel on the day.
Yeah.
And that's not going to be good enough.
Right.
So
if the volume is so essential, then why do so many time-crunched athletes still outperform the high-mileage grinders? That's actually real. Like, I've seen that.
Yeah.
I know there's guys out there that we've raced with, and I mean, I'm not saying, like, raced loosely where I'm like, oh, they're just, like, I know there are people we've ridden with in race events, that literally live on their bike, like, tons of miles. And I only know this because I go back on, like, when we add each other on Strava, I see all their, like,
they all add him.
They all add me.
They don't.
Yeah.
Nobody adds
Nobody
me.
likes Travis.
They're like, I don't need to know another ginger. Forget that.
So, but I've seen people that ride, a couple hundred miles a week, and at a time when I was anywhere from 100 to 125 miles a week, which I've upped it since then. But, and in a race, like, I could put the screws to them, and they couldn't hold. Now, there's a lot of factors that could lead up to that, but it's like they ride their bike a hell of a lot more than I ride mine. So if volume is really king, then why am I beating that person consistently? Not just one event either. I've seen the same person at multiple events and ridden with these people.
So I would say that most of the time, you know, I think your expectations for the race are different. So maybe that person,
maybe their C race,
right? Maybe that's just it's their tune-up race. They're not really putting money in.
Way to take a little bit of pride and joy. That little bit of like hope that I had that I was actually getting good. You just chopped it right out from under
so
me.
I think when you're a high volume athlete, right? Like, you know, we race a lot, but there's some races where I'm willing to go and give everything I have.
Yeah.
And
there's truth in that.
There's a lot of races that we show up to that I didn't even want to be there in the first place.
You know, I'm not gonna lie. There's a lot of truth in that, and I mean, you don't have to go very far. You just look at last week's result sheet, and you got DNF next to each of our names.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, we said it on the mini episode. Like, I really didn't want to DNF that thing, but because I mean, it was so much fun, such a great course.
Yeah, I really wanted. Like, it was a great day.
I know.
And if if we didn't wreck,
yeah, and not only that, but it's like it's so early in the year. There were just a lot of good excuses that I'm going to come up with.
Yep.
And I'll keep going. Like, we can keep going for hours with the excuses. But at the end of the day, we made the call. We decided to do what we did. And there's probably a lot of people like, oh, you know what? I beat that guy. And I'm like, that's okay.
Yeah.
You did. You beat me. You beat me on that day.
You did.
You know,
Definitely did.
And the funny thing is with gravel, it's hard unless you're truly going for the podium. It's never about that.
No.
It's just funny. I mean, we take pride if we finish in the top 10% or the top 10 or something like that. But like, at the end of the day, it's all about just having a good time.
Yeah.
You know. So anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, it's. I think it comes down to that. But the thing that I would say is, you know, the intensity athletes can't race week after week or multiple races within a year, because eventually that
kind of bogs down.
Bogs down and basically, so
yeah,
you could have caught them after they've competed in like 4 events, and this is like the last one, and they're just ready cooked.
So if you're down one of these camps, like especially if you're on the volume camp, okay, and you're not improving, is it because your philosophy is wrong, or are you just too soft?
Just more volume. Just quit your job.
Hard. Stay hard, Travis.
Stay hard. Quit your job. Just freaking go out and ride from sun up to sundown every day.
Oh my gosh.
Just get a divorce.
I think the question really is, like, this is another good one. Like our athletes who rely on volume, are they just hiding from the real competition because intensity exposes their limits? You know, I'm not gonna lie. There's some days where I'm like, you know, I just don't feel like doing a hard effort, and there's some races where I'm not gonna lie, but
I think what separates good athletes from, you know, athletes that just go out and ride and stuff like that is the willingness to work on those weaknesses, right? So like if I felt that like my 5-second sprint was something that was holding me back in a race,
then you'd be working
I'd
on
be
that.
out doing 5-second sprints.
I will say though, I mean, last fall, when I was kind of putting a lot of effort in those short sprint efforts or sprint segments, it was fun when you get on a ride and you can go and show that off a little bit, and like, I shouldn't say show it off, because it's not about that. That's the wrong choice of words, but like express that fitness.
Yeah.
Right. And then somebody who is not doing that, and you realize, and like, it's not about beating that person, because when we just go out and ride, I never think about that. It's more about like, I know where I was, you know, comparing to that person. I know where I was, and now I know where I am, and man, I see real improvement. Like, it's a way to see the improvement. And again, it's not about beating people, because when we do our group rides or we go out with a couple buddies and go ride, it's never about beating anybody. Like, we have little friendly sprints and things like that, but it's not about that. It's about like, you have real evidence of your improvement.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Well, it's just adding like another little tool to the toolbox. They're like, oh, now
sure.
that 5-second sprint is in there. So that's something that
You
you,
know what-
can
you know,
use
I
and
did- I-
gets you out.
So I did a 5 second. Well, I didn't intentionally do 5 seconds. I think it's just all I could last because I hadn't done the volume. But I did a 5 second sprint outside. I remember a couple of weeks ago we were riding. It had that nice day.
Yeah.
And I did a little sprint effort, and like my power wasn't terribly far off from where it was last fall, and I haven't been training it. I'm like, maybe we're onto something here. Maybe the body's going to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is actually a good question. I should have thought of this earlier. If intensity is so great, then why don't the sprinters win the endurance races? I mean, you can't, if this is all about percent of FTP and I can do a, 1500 watt sprint, why can't I win an endurance race? I mean, obviously I got the strength.
Yeah, obviously. But no, you don't.
But you don't. I mean, there's a reason that the top sprinters in the world rarely win a mountain stage race.
Yeah.
And, or even the flat race. Like sometimes they have a hard time in the flat races. So, are you actually training for performance, or are you just collecting data to justify your choices?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great one. So like, are you training for performance, right? So there's a difference, right? There's some athletes out there just like, man, I just like to ride my bike. And maybe those are the guys that are putting in, 200 miles a week or whatever, and consistently, and they're just riding their bike, and they're not really, they have it on Strava or whatever.
Yep.
But I think, again, people like us, and some of the people out there, like, we want to be better or get better. I don't want to ride just 200 miles just to ride 200 miles, I guess.
Yeah.
I want to do it better, faster. Again, I have this notion that sometimes it probably won't hurt as much, but it always hurts the same.
It always hurts.
So
yeah, I know.
Or the thing that I'm saying now to myself that kind of like helps is that I'll recover faster. So like, it's like I'll be able to walk the next day. That's the whole thing.
The other thing is, if you get done faster, it's more time for recovery.
Yeah, exactly. So I need the extra 2 hours.
Yeah.
Difference.
It's funny because that is the old saying, right? It never hurts. It never hurts less. You just get faster. I can remember like riding some of the first, that first year or so, riding, and especially in groups, and just knowing how much it hurt, and looking over at other people, and it's like it just didn't seem like it hurt them as much. And I'm like, when does it ever stop hurting? Like, when does it ever stop hurting?
Yeah.
And then it's like it really doesn't. Like, it just hurts always.
Yeah.
And then you have to defend yourself. Well, why do you keep doing it if it always hurts? I'm like, I don't know.
I don't know.
There's
keep showing up.
something wrong with me.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
before I rode on road bike, I still have, but I mean, I rode a lot more on the motorcycle. Motorcycle's a lot more fun.
Yeah.
A lot less painful.
Yep.
But I will say, like, there's so much reward and self-power and putting the effort in, and there's therapy on two wheels. That's a real thing. That's a big thing in the motorcycle community, especially cruiser type bikes. Therapy on, two-wheel therapy, and that is a real thing.
Yep.
And therapy is obviously a loose word. It is literal therapy for some people, and that's awesome. It's a great outlet. But it really is. I mean, there's something about two wheels, the wind, and it's just so relaxing. I think that's why I actually don't mind the endurance rides so much. But
yeah, I just like it because we just get to go and just be outside.
Just enjoy it.
Yeah, because I mean, like, how many times do you get to be like, oh, what'd you do on your Saturday?
Yeah.
Like, oh, I went to the bar and I got so shit-faced. It was crazy. Where it's like, oh, I went and rode for like 5 hours, and we went all the way up to this town that we've never been to, and
that's the best.
And we met this person that said Gene Simmons is the best. And
that guy was ready to have a fight in the parking lot with anybody that was going to tell him that Gene Simmons was not the best.
Yeah, I'm not a big Kiss fan, but
I know, but you were that day.
Yeah.
That was great.
I was like, I don't need to get in a fight in this town over.
I'm watching this conversation play out. I'm like, I didn't know Travis liked Kiss. That's weird. He's never listened to Kiss.
Yeah, he's never. It's not even on a Spotify list at all. Like, no, yeah, this person was just not all there, or,
Yeah.
they were suffering.
To be fair, neither were we, because we're riding for.
Yeah, we're riding out there in the middle of, I don't know, someplace Missouri, and just they were just, they were high, but not from running.
Right.
So.
Still on the search.
Yep, still on the search. So,
right,
yeah, that was good, man.
Right.
Whether or not you're a volume person or a intensity person, I'm always of the camp that you definitely need a healthy dose of both.
Yeah.
To improve, and it's not all just one or the other. So don't fall into that camp, guys.
You got it.
So, all right,
and wrap it up for today.
That'll be it for today. We'll catch you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Please, if you like what we are doing here, leave a like, rate us, comment, subscribe, and share with your friends. It really helps us grow and finds us more SufferSooner squad mates. And remember, when the finish line feels impossibly far away, we don't give up, we push harder, we dig deeper, and we find solace in the knowledge that our suffering is temporary and our resilience is forever.